The billionaire and his strange children, the world knew his name. Everyone had heard of Alexander Vanar, the billionaire with 6 children who were unlike anyone else on Earth. His company built towers of glass that touched the clouds, and his money was said to flow like rivers. But it was not his business, not his ships, and not his factories that made him the center of every story. It was his children. They were called the 6 twins. Strange because the word twins usually meant 2, but here it meant 6. Born on the same night under the same roof, they looked like mirrors of each other. Same dark hair, same pale skin, same bright eyes, cold as silver. Doctors argued about whether they were truly human or something else entirely, but there was one fact no one could deny. The 6 twins never slept. From the moment they came into this world, not one of them had ever closed their eyes to rest. Nurses had tried. Scientists had begged. Sleep doctors had tested them in every way. Pills, machines, hypnosis, nothing worked. The children would simply lie still, waiting, staring with unblinking eyes until morning came. At first, the world thought it was a miracle. Children of the future, one headline read. A new evolution, said another. Talk shows argued about whether this was a blessing or a curse. Crowds gathered outside Alexander's mansion just to see the windows of the children's rooms glowing all night long. But to Alexander, the sight was not a gift. It was a shadow. He often sat alone in his study, his face hidden in the dark, listening to the faint footsteps of his children roaming the hallways at 3 a.m. They moved like ghosts, never tired, never weak. And yet he wondered, what is the cost? When they were babies, he had feared they would collapse one day. But they grew strong, taller, sharper. They learned faster than other children. They could read a book once and repeat it word for word. They could solve puzzles that his best engineers could not. And yet, they were never happy. Their laughter was rare, their smiles thin. Each night they would gather near the tall windows of their mansion and stand together, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the stars. They whispered softly, their voices blending into a language no one could understand. If Alexander stepped closer, the whispers would stop. The children would only turn their heads and look at him with calm, unblinking eyes, as if he had interrupted something ancient. The mansion staff whispered too. They said the children's shadows sometimes moved even when their bodies did not. They said the twins could predict when a storm would arrive before the news even reported it. One maid swore she saw the youngest twin, Clara, touch a broken clock and make it tick again without lifting a tool. Rumors spread, but Alexander allowed no outsiders into their rooms anymore. The scientists had been banned after one twin nearly stopped breathing during an experiment. He swore he would never risk them again. These were his children, his blood, his legacy, and yet the fear inside him never left. When he looked into their silver eyes, he saw no sleep, no dreams, no rest. It was as if something held them in chains, something invisible that not even his billions could buy an answer for. At night, Alexander often stood outside their door, listening, and sometimes when the wind was quiet, he heard them chanting, not in English, not in any earth language he knew. The sound was low, like the humming of a machine deep under the floor. Sometimes it rose higher, sharp enough to make his skin crawl. He told himself it was nothing. Children playing, children pretending, but inside a voice whispered, "This is not human." One night, unable to sleep, he walked to their rooms at 2 a.m. He opened the door just a little. The moonlight spilled across the polished floor. All 6 stood in a perfect line, facing the window, their eyes locked on the stars above. Their lips moved together, speaking that strange language again. He almost called out to them, almost demanded they stop, but something in his chest froze him. It was not just the words. It was the way the stars outside seemed to flicker as if answering them. He closed the door quietly and pressed his back against the wall. For the first time in years, Alexander Vanar felt like a man, not a billionaire. He felt small. The next morning, the children acted normal. They ate their breakfast in silence, reading newspapers, though they were only 13 years old. When he asked what they had been doing at night, they simply said, "Nothing, Father, nothing." But he did not believe them, and in his heart he knew the truth. The 6 twins were not only his children, they were something more, something that belonged to the stars, and as he sat at the head of the long dining table, watching their silver eyes glint in the sunlight, one thought would not leave his mind. What will happen the day they finally close their eyes? The arrival of the alien Maid. The mansion of Alexander Veynar stood on the edge of the city, its towers tall enough to watch the sky. Inside, servants moved like quiet shadows, keeping the billionaire's world in order. But none of them dared to stay near the children's wing at night. No one wanted to hear the whispers. No one wanted to meet those silver eyes in the dark. And then one day, a new maid arrived. Her name was Lyra. She came with nothing more than a small bag, a worn cloak, and tired eyes. She was poor, her accent strange, her clothes simple. She told the overseer she had lost her family in the border wars and had nowhere else to go. She asked for work, even the lowest kind, scrubbing floors, cleaning dishes, carrying laundry. The overseer looked at her doubtfully. Many applicants had been turned away, for Alexander demanded loyalty and silence in his house. But something in Lyra's gaze seemed desperate, and so she was hired. At first she blended in. She mopped the long marble halls, polished silver plates, and swept dust from rooms too large for one person to ever use. She worked quietly, never asking questions, never complaining. The other servants ignored her mostly, and that was how she preferred it. But Lyra was not ordinary. Late at night, when others slept, she stayed awake. She could hear things no one else could, the faint hum inside the walls, the vibrations under. The floor, the quiet rhythm of the children's whispers traveling through the air. She recognized it instantly. It was not human speech. It was a language she had known since birth. It was the tongue of her people, spoken far away from Earth, on a planet that no longer existed. Lyra was not human at all. She was an alien refugee, the last daughter of a fallen world. She had hidden her truth carefully, moving from one corner of the galaxy to another, until she found herself here, in the house of a man who unknowingly sheltered children tied to the same darkness that had destroyed her home. The first time she saw the 6 twins up close, she froze. They stood together in the corridor, their eyes like silver mirrors, their movement so perfectly in sync it was unnatural. They did not smile. They did not greet her. They simply looked at her as if they already knew who she was. Her hands trembled around the basket she carried. In that moment, she felt a sharp thought pierce her mind. Not her own thought, but theirs. "You understand us." The words echoed without sound, directly in her head. She nearly dropped the basket, but she forced herself to keep walking, to keep her face still. From that night on, Lyra kept her distance, but she watched. She watched as they walked in silence at midnight, as they stood at the windows whispering to the stars. And every time her blood turned cold. The words they spoke were not random. They were chants, fragments of commands she had heard long ago, back when enemy ships darkened her skies. They were calling to something not of this world. Lyra wanted to run. She wanted to leave the mansion and never return. But she could not. She had nowhere else to go, and some force inside her told her this was no accident. Fate had brought her here to these children, to this secret. One night, as she carried fresh sheets to their rooms, she lingered near the doorway. The twins were whispering again, their voices low and sharp. She closed her eyes, focusing, listening. And then she understood. They were speaking of a machine. A great machine hidden far beyond Earth. A machine that fed on their minds, keeping them awake, using them like living batteries. That was why they never slept. Every moment they closed their eyes, the machine would pull harder, draining them, holding them captive in a way no chains could. Lyra bit her lip until it bled. This was the same machine that had destroyed her planet. It had stolen the dreams of her people until they had nothing left. And now here it was again, feeding on these human children. That night she could not rest. She sat in the servants' quarters, staring at her hands. She had promised herself never to fight again, never to reveal what she was. She had lost too much already. But if she stayed silent now, the 6 twins would wither away, their bodies breaking piece by piece until nothing remained. The next morning, she moved through the mansion as usual, carrying water, cleaning floors. But her eyes followed Alexander Veynar wherever he went. She wondered. Did he know? Did he suspect? Or was he blind, thinking his children were miracles instead of prisoners? When their paths finally crossed in the great hall, Alexander paused to look at her. His sharp eyes studied her face. For a heartbeat, she thought he could see through her disguise. "You are new," he said coldly. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "Work hard, speak little, and you will last here." She bowed, but her thoughts burned. If only you knew the truth. That night, the whispers grew louder. The children's chant carried through the walls like waves of static. Lyra pressed her palms to her ears, but it was no use. The language filled her head, dragging her back to memories she had buried. Fire in the sky, cities falling, her people collapsing as their dreams were stolen. Her breath shook. She knew she could not stay silent forever. And as she looked at the mansion glowing in the moonlight, she whispered to herself, "I must choose. If I wait too long, it will be too late, for them, and maybe for Earth." The twins' secret Lyra had lived in the mansion only a few weeks, but every night felt heavier than the last. The whispers of the 6 twins were no longer a mystery to her. They were a warning. She knew the language they spoke because it belonged to the enemy who had taken her world. But what she did not know was why these children, born to a human billionaire, were connected to such darkness. One stormy night, lightning flashed over the city. The servants rushed to close the tall glass windows. Lyra carried a tray of warm tea to the library, where Alexander Venar was seated among piles of books. He had been reading reports again, scientific records, test results, pages filled with graphs proving his children did not need sleep. He glanced at her briefly. "Leave it on the table," he said. Lyra obeyed. But as she turned to leave, the chandelier above flickered. The lights went out for a moment, then returned. And in that brief darkness, Lyra heard something. Not from the hall, not from the walls, from the sky itself. It was the same chant, louder than ever, echoing in her mind. Her hands trembled, spilling tea on the tray. Alexander's sharp eyes caught it. "You heard it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Lyra froze. "What do you mean, sir?" He stood, his face pale, but his voice steady. "Do not lie to me. You heard what my children hear. The words that come when the stars flicker. You are not like the others." Her chest tightened. For a long moment she thought he might throw her out, expose her. But instead his shoulders sagged. He looked tired, older than his years. "I have watched them for 13 years, Alexander said. I have seen doctors fail. I have seen priests fail. They say my children are a miracle, but I see chains. Tell me, Maid, what do you know that I do not?" Lyra swallowed hard. This was the moment she had feared. But she could not keep silent. "They are not free," she whispered. "Something beyond Earth holds them. A machine. It drains them every second. That is why they never sleep." Alexander's face hardened. "A machine?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "I know because my people were enslaved by it. The same chants, the same voices, the same hunger. That machine is ancient. It uses children like vessels. Every time they try to close their eyes, it pulls them into its grip. If it is not stopped, their bodies will not last." The billionaire stared at her for a long time. His pride battled with fear. Finally he said, "If what you say is true, why my children? Why not others?" Lyra shook her head. "I don't know. Perhaps they were chosen. Perhaps you were targeted. But this I know, if they continue, the machine will kill them slowly. It will leave only husks." For the first time, Alexander's mask of power cracked. His hand tightened on the back of his chair, his knuckles white. He whispered, "No one takes my children. Not men, not gods, not machines." But even as he said it, thunder rolled across the sky and a faint vibration trembled through the mansion walls. That night, Lyra returned to the servants' quarters, but she did not sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the glowing towers of the city, wondering if she had done the right thing. Alexander knew the truth now, but would he accept it, or would his pride blind him further? The answer came sooner than she expected. At midnight, she woke to footsteps outside her door. She rose quickly, heart pounding. The corridor was dark, but she could see the shapes of the 6 twins walking past, silent, graceful, like shadows that belonged to no one. She followed them quietly, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. They led her to the highest tower of the mansion, where the great glass dome opened to the sky. Lightning danced across the clouds and the air smelled of metal. The twins stood in a perfect circle, their hands joined. Their silver eyes glowed faintly, and then their voices rose. It was not a whisper anymore. It was a full chant, loud, strong, shaking the air itself. The glass trembled. The stars above seemed to ripple like water. Lyra clutched her chest, feeling the pressure in her lungs. The machine was near. She could almost see it in her mind. A vast structure turning endlessly in the void, wires like veins, pulling life from its captives. The children's bodies stiffened. Their voices grew sharper. One of them, Clara, arched her back and let out a cry. Silver light poured from her mouth. "No," Lyra gasped. She rushed forward, breaking the circle, grabbing Clara's hands. "Stop, you are not machines. You are human." For a moment the chant broke. The light flickered. The other twins stared at her, their silver eyes glowing brighter, their thoughts piercing her mind. "You should not be here." Lyra's knees shook, but she did not let go. "If you keep calling it, you will die. Do you not feel it burning inside you?" The twins did not answer with words. Instead, she felt their fear, deep hidden, buried under obedience. They were trapped. They wanted to resist, but the machine's grip was strong. And then Alexander burst into the dome. His voice thundered, "Enough!" The children fell silent, their eyes dimming. The chant stopped. The storm outside weakened. He looked at Lyra, then at his children. His voice was low, shaking with rage and dread. "No more secrets. Tell me everything." The 6 twins lowered their heads, and in that heavy silence the truth began to rise like a tide. The billionaire's bargain, the storm outside had died down, but the storm inside Alexander Vaynar's mansion had only begun. The 6 twins stood in silence under the glass dome, their silver eyes dim after the chant. Lyra still held Clara's trembling hands, her heart racing. Alexander's voice cut through the heavy air. "I want the truth. No more whispers, no more silence. My children are mine, and I will not be kept in the dark." The twins exchanged glances. They were mirrors of one another. Yet in that moment they looked like broken reflections, frightened, caught between 2 worlds. Finally, the eldest, Elias, spoke. His voice was soft but carried weight. "Father, we are not what you think." Alexander stepped closer. "Then what are you?" "We are yours," Elias said. "But we are also theirs." He lifted his hand toward the sky. "Every night they call us the machine. It pulls our minds away. We cannot fight it. If we try to sleep, it tightens. If we resist, it burns." Alexander's jaw clenched. "Who are they?" Lyra spoke quietly. "The same ones who destroyed my people. The invaders. They built the machine long ago. They use children like vessels because young minds are easier to bind." The billionaire turned on her. His eyes narrowed. "So you admit it. You are not human," she met his gaze. "No, but I am not your enemy. I am here because I know what this machine does. I have seen it consume a world. I will not watch it take your children too." For a long moment, Alexander said nothing. His face was a mask, but his hands shook at his sides. He had always believed his children were untouchable, chosen, blessed by fate. Now he faced the possibility that they were prey in a trap far bigger than Earth. "You expect me to believe," he said at last, "that my empire, my billions, my walls of steel and glass, mean nothing against some unseen thing in the sky?" Lyra's voice was steady. "Yes. Money cannot break chains that are not made of iron." The words hit him harder than she expected. He turned away, walking to the edge of the dome, staring out at the city lights below. His reflection in the glass looked smaller than it ever had. Behind him, the twins began to sway, exhausted, their breaths shallow. Clara whispered, "Father, we are so tired." Alexander spun around, and for the first time his pride fell from his face. He saw not miracles, not symbols, but children, his children, suffering. "What can be done?" His voice cracked like a man begging. Lyra hesitated. The truth was cruel. If they sleep, the machine will weaken. But the moment they do, it will strike back. The invaders will know. They will not let go without a fight. Alexander's fists tightened. "Then let them come." Lyra shook her head. "You don't understand. Their reach is endless. They destroyed my home, and my people fought harder than you can imagine. If the twins fall asleep, Earth itself may be seen as a threat. The machine will not only fight for them, it will fight to silence everyone." Silence fell over the dome. The storm clouds outside had broken apart, revealing a clear night sky full of stars. But to Alexander, those stars no longer looked peaceful. They looked like eyes watching him. He turned back to Lyra. If I allow them to sleep, what happens to them? They will dream, she said softly. For the first time in their lives, they will be free. But their dreams will be dangerous. The machine will try to pull them apart. If they are strong enough, they will resist. If not, she stopped. If not what? Alexander demanded. They will not wake. The words cut through him like a blade. He looked at his children, at their pale faces and silver eyes. All his life he had fought to protect what was his. He had built walls, bought armies, crushed enemies. But here was an enemy he could not bribe, could not sue, could not bury with money. And for the first time, Alexander Vaynar, the untouchable billionaire, felt powerless. He walked slowly back to the circle, kneeling in front of Clara, brushing her cold cheek with his hand. You are all I have, he whispered. If I lose you, everything ends. The other twins watched him, their eyes softening. Elias said, Father, we don't want power. We don't want to be symbols. We only want rest. Alexander closed his eyes. The bargain lay clear before him. If he let them continue as they were, they might live longer, but empty, hollow, chained to the machine. If he risked their sleep, he could free them, but perhaps lose them forever and bring Earth into the fire. He stood and faced Lyra. If I let this happen, you must guide them. You know their enemy better than I ever could. Lyra bowed her head. I will. Then hear me, Alexander said, his voice regaining steel. If the invaders come for my children, I will fight them with everything I have. I will burn every coin in my vaults, tear down every wall of this city, until nothing remains but my family standing free. The 6 twins looked at him with something they had never shown before. Hope. But far above the mansion, unseen by human eyes, something stirred in the void. The machine had felt the disturbance. It knew the chant had been broken. And in its endless circuits, a new command was written. Prepare to strike. The maid's choice, the mansion slept, but Lyra could not. She sat by the narrow window of the servants' quarters, staring out at the dark horizon. The city lights flickered faintly below, but beyond them was only black sky, silent, endless, and alive with hidden watchers. She could still hear the children's voices from earlier, echoing in her mind. Elias's quiet strength, Clara's trembling plea. Their silver eyes had begged for freedom, though none of them dared to say it aloud. They were prisoners, and she knew the prison well. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. She had run for so many years, hiding her alien blood, avoiding attention, living small so the machine would never notice her again. And yet here she was, standing in its shadow once more. Fate had dragged her back into the fight she had sworn she was done with. The billionaire had made his promise. He had vowed to fight for his children no matter the cost. But she knew men like Alexander. Their words were heavy, their pride heavier. He might fight the invaders with money and armies, but not with what the children truly needed, a chance to rest. And so the choice was hers. At midnight, when the halls grew quiet and the last servants drifted into sleep, Lyra rose. She moved silently like water, her bare feet gliding across the marble floors. She carried nothing with her but a memory, a song from her lost world. The 6 twins' doors were always locked from the outside, but tonight they stood open. It was as if the children were waiting for her. Inside, the room was dim, silver curtains swaying in the moonlight. The 6 of them sat on their beds, awake as always. Elias looked up first. His voice brushed against her thoughts like a whisper. You came, Lyra nodded. She could not hide from them. Their minds were too sharp, too linked. I have something for you, she said quietly. Clara tilted her head. What is it? Lyra sat down on the edge of the bed. She looked at their pale faces, their weary eyes. It is something simple, something human. A gift your father cannot give you, no matter how much power he has. The children leaned closer. Even their breath seemed to pause. It is sleep, she whispered. Elias frowned. We cannot. You can, Lyra said. If you are guided. If you are reminded how. She closed her eyes. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew steady. She began to hum. It was an old song, older than she was, carried through her people for generations. A lullaby meant to quiet storms, to ease children into dreams. The sound was soft, fragile, almost too small for the vast room. But it was different from the chants, different from the sharp commands of the machine. It was warm. It was alive. The twins' silver eyes flickered. Clara's head dipped, her lashes brushing against her cheeks. For the first time in 13 years, her body relaxed, and then it happened. Clara closed her eyes. The air itself shivered. The floor vibrated. The windows rattled. Somewhere far beyond Earth, a chain cracked. The machine stirred. Lyra kept singing, her voice stronger now, pushing through the fear. Another twin, Jonas, fell back against his pillow, his breath deepening. Then another. The circle of 6 began to break, their minds slipping from the grip that had held them for so long. But with each child that closed their eyes, the world outside grew louder. Alarms blared from hidden panels in the mansion. Lights flickered red. The sky above pulsed with unnatural lightning. The machine had noticed. Lyra's song wavered, but she did not stop. She poured every memory, every shred of love for her lost people into the lullaby. Let them rest. Let them dream. Let them be free, Elias fought hardest. His body shook as though invisible hands were pulling him upright. His eyes glowed, his mouth forming words that were not his own. "They are calling me," he gasped. "Don't listen," Lyra urged, her hand gripping his. "You are not theirs. You are your father's. You are your own." He looked at her, tears in his silver eyes. Then with a shudder he collapsed back onto the bed, finally surrendering to sleep. All 6 lay still, breathing, dreaming. And then the mansion itself shook. The glass dome above cracked with a sharp sound. Servants screamed in the halls. Alexander stormed into the room, his robe flying behind him, his eyes wide with terror. "What have you done?" he roared. Lyra rose to her feet, her chest heaving. "I gave them rest." The ground trembled again, stronger this time. Outside, the sky bled red. Shapes began to move in the clouds, dark, enormous, impossible. The billionaire grabbed her arm. "You fool! You've brought them here." Lyra met his gaze, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They were already here. Better to fight them while your children are free than let them wither as slaves." Alexander's lips parted, but no words came. He looked at his children truly sleeping for the first time, and his anger cracked into fear. Outside, the red sky thundered with the arrival of something vast. The machine was coming to reclaim what it had lost, and inside the mansion, a poor alien maid stood ready to face it. The collapse of the machine. The mansion shook like a ship caught in a storm. Chandeliers swung wildly, glass shattered, and the servants screamed as they ran through the halls. Outside, the night sky glowed with a sick red light, as if the stars themselves had caught fire. The 6 twins lay asleep at last, their breaths slow and even. For the first time in their lives, their faces looked soft, almost human, but their peace came at a cost. The machine had noticed. High above Earth, in the void between stars, a massive structure began to stir. It was older than empires, its body made of endless black metal, its veins glowing with silver fire. For centuries it had consumed the dreams of worlds, and now it felt chains breaking. It felt hunger. It felt rage. In the mansion, alarms blared. Alexander Vayner stood frozen at the side of his children's beds, torn between terror and awe. He wanted to shake them awake, to drag them out of danger. But when he saw their faces, so peaceful, so free, he stopped. His chest ached. This was what he had longed for all these years. To see them rest. But the red light outside grew brighter. Lyra stood at the window, her body tense, her eyes fixed on the sky. She knew the signs too well. Shadows moved through the clouds, enormous shapes shifting with mechanical precision. Alien ships. The servants would see thunder. She saw war. "They are coming," she whispered. Alexander turned sharply. "Then wake them. Do it now." Lyra spun toward him, her voice sharp. "If I wake them, the machine will never release them again. They will remain chained until they die. Better that than losing them tonight." He shouted. "No," Lyra said firmly, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If they stay asleep, the machine weakens. Every second they dream, its hold loosens. This is our only chance to break it." Alexander's face twisted with conflict. His empire had taught him control, power, certainty. But now nothing obeyed him. Not the storm, not the sky, not even his own fear. The ground rumbled again, stronger. Books fell from shelves, walls cracked. Outside, the red glow split open like a wound in the heavens. A colossal shadow emerged, part machine, part fortress, its size beyond imagination. The machine had come to Earth itself. The 6 twins stirred in their sleep. Their bodies twitched, their lips moved as though whispering unseen words. Lyra rushed to them, kneeling beside Clara, holding her hand. "Stay strong," she murmured. "Do not listen to it. You are free." But inside their dreams, the battle had already begun. The children floated in endless darkness, surrounded by silver chains that stretched in every direction. At the center loomed the machine, a monstrous heart of gears and fire. It called to them, its voice cold and endless. "Return. You are mine." The twins cried out, struggling against the chains. Their small hands bled as they pulled, their voices trembling. For the first time they resisted. For the first time they dared to fight. In the waking world, Alexander grabbed Lyra's arm. "Tell me what to do." "I cannot just stand here." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "You can protect them. Not with money, not with power. With faith. They need to know they are not alone." He blinked, confused.
"Faith?"
"Speak to them," Lyra urged. "They will hear you even in dreams. You are their anchor." Alexander's chest heaved. He turned to his children, sleeping but trembling, their faces twisted in pain. He dropped to his knees beside their beds. His voice shook, but he spoke loudly, clearly. "My children, you are not machines. You are not slaves. You are mine. You are human. You are strong, and I will not let anyone take you from me." The mansion shook again, but this time the chains in the dream world trembled too. The twins heard him. Elias's voice rose in the dark, echoing his father's words. "We are not yours. We are ours," the machine screamed. Its voice rattled through the air like thunder. It pulled harder at the chains, but cracks appeared along its endless frame. Lyra lifted her arms, chanting in her own tongue. A countersong, a weapon of memory. Her voice joined Alexander's, human strength and alien sorrow binding together. The twins clung to it, pulling harder, their silver eyes blazing even in their dreams. And then, the first chain snapped. The sound rippled through the void. Another broke, then another. The machine thrashed, lightning bursting across the sky above the mansion. Servants fell to the floor, covering their ears. The city below flickered with power surges, as if the very grid could not handle the energy being released. Inside the dream, Clara whispered, "I see it. I see the way out." She reached for her siblings, their hands linking in unity. Together they tore through the last of the chains. The machine roared, a sound so loud it made the earth tremble. Its vast body cracked, silver fire spilling into the void. Pieces of its endless structure fell, burning as they vanished into nothing. In the mansion, the storm outside broke apart. The red light faded. The sky cleared. The ground stilled, and on their beds the 6 twins lay breathing softly, their faces calm, their bodies free. Lyra collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had heard that sound once before, the death cry of the machine. But this time it was not her world that had been saved. It was these children. Alexander sank into a chair, his face pale, his hands shaking. He looked at Lyra, then at his sleeping children. For the first time he whispered, not as a billionaire, not as a man of power, but as a father. They are free. But deep in the silence of space, beyond the ruins of the machine, something stirred. The invaders had lost their tool. They would not forgive. The real war had only just begun. Humanity's stand. The night after the machine's collapse was quiet. Too quiet. The mansion stood scarred, cracks in the walls, broken glass on the floors, servants whispering prayers they barely understood. Yet inside the children's wing, silence reigned, a silence no one had ever known before. The 6 twins slept. For the first time in their lives, they dreamed. Their breaths were steady, their faces calm, their hands curled softly against the sheets like ordinary children. The sight should have been peaceful, but for Alexander Venar and Lyra it was not peace. It was warning, because when chains break, masters always come looking. Alexander stood at the foot of their beds, his arms crossed tightly, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. He had not left the room since the night before. He feared if he turned away, even for a moment, the invaders would snatch his children into the dark again. Lyra sat nearby, her cloak wrapped around her shoulders, staring at the window. Beyond it, the stars burned brighter than usual. They were not just stars to her. They were signals, scouts, watchers. The invaders had felt their loss. Now they were searching. How long will they sleep? Alexander asked, his voice low. Until they choose to wake, Lyra replied. This is their first true rest. Do not disturb it, he turned to her sharply. And when they wake, what then? Do the invaders come knocking at my gates? Lyra's gaze hardened. They will come whether the children wake or not. You broke the chain. That is a wound the invaders will not ignore. Alexander looked back at his children, his jaw tight. He had built towers, armies, wealth beyond measure, but none of it mattered now. The enemy that was coming did not care for money. They cared only for control. They will not touch them again, he muttered. Lyra studied him. For all his pride and power, he looked smaller now, more fragile. But she also saw something new in his eyes, something more dangerous than wealth. Resolve. The ground trembled faintly. Both of them froze. It was not thunder. It was not storm. It was the sound of something vast moving beyond Earth's skies. Lyra stood. They're here. Alexander's fists clenched. Then let them come. The mansion shook as shadows passed over the city. Enormous ships, black and silent, slid across the heavens like predators. Sirens wailed in the streets below. People ran, pointing at the sky in terror. Humanity had seen wars, but never like this. Inside the children's dreams, a fire spread. They stood together on an endless plain, the stars above them burning red. In the distance, the invaders approached, figures of steel and smoke, eyes glowing with hunger. But this time, the children were not chained. This time, they were free. And in their freedom, they felt something new. Dreams. Each dream was a weapon. Elias dreamed of mountains rising from the earth, and in the dream world they did. Clara dreamed of rivers flowing with light, and they cut through the invaders like fire. Jonas dreamed of voices, millions of human voices shouting in defiance, and their echoes made the ground itself shake. The invaders roared, striking back, but the children stood firm. For the first time they fought not as tools but as humans. Back in the waking world, Alexander watched the sky split open. A colossal beam of red light shot down from one of the ships, aimed directly at the mansion. Servants screamed. Guards scattered. Alexander did not move. He spread his arms wide, standing in front of the window like a shield. His voice boomed. If you want them, take me first. The beam struck, but at the last moment it shattered. Light exploded into 1,000 pieces, dissolving before it touched the mansion. Lyra gasped. The children. They're protecting us from inside their dreams. Another beam fired, then another, but each broke apart before reaching the ground. The invaders hesitated, their massive ships slowing, uncertain. Alexander's heart pounded as he realized the truth. His children were not weapons. They were dreamers, and in dreams humans held power the invaders could never understand. Lyra whispered almost to herself, "This is what my people never had. Unity, a father's faith, a world standing behind them." The twins' dreams grew stronger. Their joined hands glowed with silver fire. In the sky, cracks spread across the invaders' ships as if reality itself rejected them. And then, one by one, the ships began to break. The city below erupted in cries as alien vessels split apart, collapsing into flames. The world had seen invasion, and it had seen resistance. Not with armies, not with weapons, but with dreams. In the mansion, the six twins stirred. Their eyes fluttered open, no longer cold silver but warm with life. Clara smiled faintly. "Father, we slept." Alexander knelt, pulling them close, his voice shaking. "Yes, my children, and in your sleep, you saved us all." Lyra turned to the window, watching the last fragments of alien ships burn away in the night sky. For the first time since her own world had fallen, she felt hope. The invaders were not gone. They would return. But tonight proved something she had thought impossible. Humanity could stand, and when it did, not even the oldest machine in the stars could break it.